everybody. Welcome to the Coach's Journey podcast. Robbie here, and also here is...
Alex Swallow.
Yeah, good. That cue didn't work so well. I did a point, but I'm not sure if I even was on the screen when I did that. Hey, Alex. Yeah, so everybody, we're here. Alex and I had this in because we're playing with a new platform for podcasting, for recording the Coach's Journey calls, which will hopefully mean you'll get even better audio and video and that kind of thing from us. And because we had the call in, we thought, is there a topic that we would like to have a short conversation about, which might be useful to audience? And it's kind of... I guess a few reasons for that. One is it's better for getting an actual test that we can play with, mess with the editing tools, all that kind of thing, to have an actual conversation on this. And the other is the kind of, I guess it's like always been my sense, like since the early days of the 12-minute blog and that kind of thing, that like, if you can make something. And we'll see if it's useful and trust. And maybe it'll never see the light of day, but I suspect it will. Anything you want to add to that, Alex, before we kind of dive into the question that we're going to play with today?
I think it's really nice for our audience to sort of know that we're trying these things live. In terms of when the podcast just counted us in, which you don't get on Zoom, and it's the first time I've ever seen that. And so it's really nice to have our sort of our genuine reactions to what's going on. Because we're in the moment of learning these things together.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're playing with Riverside FM for people who are interested. If you're going to sign up for Riverside, though, email me because I can get myself some money for the Coach's Journey if you sign up via a link that we provide you. But lots of other podcasters use this platform, and it's a very cool one. So the thing we're going to play with today a little, and this is a topic that's close to your heart, and I've kind of thought about quite a lot in different ways for different reasons that we might get into, is the idea of, we might say it in different ways, coaching as a digital nomad. So what's the possibilities for us for in a business like the one we work in, for working anywhere in the world, for having no location that you're tied to. But we might also just call it like, what are the possibilities for flexible working as a coach? And I know that, maybe Alex, I think we did talk about this when we did the long form interview with you, but do you want to just say something quickly about like your, in a few sentences, your history as a digital nomad?
Yeah, so my wife and I are digital nomads, but we've lived abroad in more than 10 countries and worked. But the thing is, we do it slightly. Some people are digital nomads when they're on the road all the time, but we have a home base of Sheffield and then go on some adventures together.
Yeah, right. So there are some people who, and you hear interviews with them sometimes, who basically their work is entirely location independent, has been for a long time, and they just kind of live nowhere. That's the nomad word, right? And the digital thing is because the internet has enabled this in a way that it just wasn't possible. I mean, maybe it was, early days, you could have kind of done it if you had a phone-based business and you set some automation stuff up to forward it onto a phone in a different, but it's completely different from, I don't know when, 10 years ago. And certainly to certainly since the pandemic, everybody knows about this, right? And it's, because almost everyone is or knows somebody who used to be office-based most of the time, and then after the pandemic doesn't have to be office-based anymore because all those habits and patterns are broken. That happened for me in 2017 when my wife had us comment to Costa Rica, and I went with her, knowing that this was a kind of possible thing that I could take my work, and did that. And we were there for about 3 months. And I've also, I've played with it at other times when I've been, in the UK, went away for a few days, go away for a few days with a friend, book into a Airbnb somewhere, do some work and perhaps less than normal, but some calls from there, or visiting my brother in the Netherlands where he lives and being able to do calls from there. So I've done those kinds of experiments more like, so the Costa Rica experiment for me was more, I'm living here for 3 months, what happens with my work? And then the other ones were more like, some kind of hybrid thing where it's just like, I'm going to do a bit of work while I'm somewhere. So it's like, that gives us a sense of the feelings of the kind of, not the feelings, the kind of, the different feels that you can have to this kind of thing. And when you're traveling, Alex, with work, what's the balance of that how have you found the balance of that to work?
Yeah, it can be tricky because, so you can feel an immense sense of freedom, but at the same time, there's certain constraints, and those can be things like, you might have a client who's on a completely different time zone. So you might actually find yourself working more antisocial hours than you would be if you would have stayed at home and hadn't traveled. Um, and also, you can have a best laid plans, but then there can be a power cut, or there can be the internet might go off, or the internet might not be very good. So what I find is you have to try to be flexible as possible. And I think every digital nomad strikes a different balance between the amount of work they get done and the amount of place they want to see. And so I think it depends how much you want to actually explore the place in which you're in and how much time you're going to devote to that. But the balance you have to decide in your mind is you're not on holiday. You might be on holiday for certain points of the trip. So it's almost like you can mentally take some time off. But when you're there, you're also working. And you have to kind of find a way to manage and understand that. And it's a matter of getting into a rhythm that works for you, I think.
Hi everybody, just a quick thing before we get back to the show. If you like what you're hearing on this episode, the chances are you'll love An Introduction to the Coaching Business Flywheel, a free ebook available at thecoachesjourney.com. It's the most important piece of content I've ever created for coaches, boiling down everything I've learned from this show, from working with master coaches and from my own experience into one simple model. The model not only tells you the only things you have to do to have a sustainable coaching business, but also shows you how they can form a virtuous circle that keeps your coaching business growing. It's all free, and you can find it at thecoachesjourney.com. There's a link in the show notes. Now, back to the show. Yeah, that certainly was my experience as well. It's like, how do I'm used to if I've worked for myself for like nearly 10 years now, and yet, full-time, I guess, for not quite that long, more like 7.5. But, so even I am used to there being some boundaries. This is weekend time, this is holiday time, this is work time, and part of that's deliberate. And I think that I'm remembering one trip to visit my brother where I had to I kept 2 calls in with clients, while I was there, and it did for me, it does disrupt the feel. So you like you say, you're not on holiday because that really interesting holiday feeling where I am away and separate to all of the day to day, that has not been present for me in the same way when I've done something like that. So it's like you get some of it, but not all of it. Unless, apart from those times, like you say, where, if I'm in Costa Rica and there's this week where we decide we're going to go to the beach and we're just going to stay at the beach, we're going to be in a hotel, we're not going to work, and that's a really different thing. But, different, that boundary and the kind of, the bleeding of work and holiday, that's an interesting part of it.
I think so, but I also think there's a really positive flip side to it, which is that just by working in a different environment can actually be really good for your work. So, one of the things so my wife and I, because we're both freelancers, one thing that we tend to do, even in the UK, is that we have something called cafe visits, where it was every month and we alternated. We'd meet up and basically have a debrief about our work and any work or life things, big things we want to talk about together and get some support with. And that's a lovely thing to do anyway. But we've been able to do that in some really interesting places. And I found it really inspiring to just go to different cafes and work and think in different places around the world. And so sometimes if you find the right environment, your work can really be enhanced by the space you're in and by that sort of flood of new information that you get when you go to a new place. And there's something, a concept that I hadn't heard of, someone was talking about recently, where they were saying that they really want to take advantage of the first 24 hours when they get to a new place. It was a YouTuber who was saying it, because they're saying that after that time, things become normal, quote unquote, because you've kind of adopted the norms and practices where you are a little bit. But for that first 24 hours, it's like as if everything's up in the air, but there's something really creative and has real potential in that moment, I think.
Yeah, so interesting. And it looked like most coaches will have noticed in work with clients how the different environment affects the conversation, right? But that's true of us when we are in different environments, even if they are not. Or you can mess with that by, even if one of you's in England and one of you's in Spain, if you both go for a walk, that's an interesting way to mess with the energy in the environment. And so, yeah, I really feel that. I can kind of remember the feelings of in the UK and abroad, being away and working away. Just wanted to catch the time zone thing. when I was in Costa Rica, I remember two parts of that. So one, be aware of you're in a different time zone. I had a client in Eastern Australia that I started working with in Costa Rica, which is fine there. And then when you get back to the UK, and then the clocks change. So I don't know if people know this, but if you like, British and Australian clocks go opposite ways to each other, so that you get 2 hours further apart when the clocks change, which, you know, was not something that either I or that client had bargained for, although we did good work. But what I loved about working on that kind of time zone, so the Americas time zone, was I had to do all my calls like between kind of 9 and 2. In my Costa Rican time zone, which I think Costa Rica is the same time zone as Central Standard Time or something like that, which was great because it meant I didn't check my email before I started calls, basically. And I just did the calls, which were kind of crammed into this 4 or 5 hour period. And then after that, I was free. And if I wanted to do some emails, it just felt completely different because everyone was asleep. And or stopped working. And I could send emails. And so I got this, which productivity people will tell you is the right thing to do, right? I had a client once who, her rule was only reply to yesterday's emails, never today's emails, which was great because it meant loads of stuff got sorted out today before she checked today's emails tomorrow, but also meant she kind of had this solid picture instead of this constantly moving picture of the inbox. So I found that really helped my energy. And it was also when I first realized the energetic cost of traveling all over London. So because it was the first time that I'd worked entirely from one place, and suddenly and I wasn't doing that at all, I wasn't doing it that much, but, you know, I noticed my energy change completely. Of course, I was also had the environmental shift, which had an effect on my energy too.
It's really funny you mentioned about the timings, because it's really interesting when the time zone shift is the other way around. So what I found was, like, for example, we recently had a call for the host of a podcast, and I was in Tanzania in Dar es Salaam at the time. And so basically, because it was a few hours ahead, I think it was maybe 3 hours ahead because the clocks had changed in the UK. And so I had various things I needed to negotiate. Like, actually, on the day I wasn't feeling so well. There'd been power cuts. And so in order to set things up, I needed to find a good space and check the fan was on and check the aircon was on and do various things. But it meant that I had an extra few hours before our morning meeting. And sometimes if it's that way around, you can feel really productive. Before everybody else has got up, you've already sent a load of emails.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess, you know, knowing that we're going to finish this mini episode in a minute, like, I guess one of the things I'm connecting into as we have this conversation is the great possibility in the kind of work we do, right? Especially in 2024, 2025, because, you know, phone, 4G, 5G signal, the internet, Wi-Fi, you know, technology being available in even more countries to do this kind of work this year than last year, right? So that's one real possibility of this work for people. And for some people, it's a real part of it. I guess there's part of this that for us is about inspiring people to do that, to play with it, to see what happens. But what are if people are thinking about doing that because of this conversation or just generally, we've mentioned some of them, but what are the things that you would say, think about this in order to make it as good an experience as you can?
I think the biggest thing for me is I think it makes a real difference if you're a digital nomad with someone else. So I've heard lots of stories of people traveling on their own who get quite lonely. And the reason for that is they can make really good friends in one location. But when they move on to another location, the chances are high that the friends they've made will either not be moving at the same time or will be moving to a third location. So I think manage your own expectations around the fact perhaps that when you're jetting off to visit exotic climates, people might be jealous and excited and think your life's very easy, but you still carry with you all of the things that you normally find frustrating, whatever's going on in your life at that time. And so just think about how you're going to manage that, which might include things like inviting friends to come out and see you, or thinking of social things that you can do where you can meet people. But I think the loneliness for people who do it long term, rather than the people who do it like my wife and I think that's supposed to be quite difficult. So I think expectations around that are important.
And I imagine, and you'll know this better than me though, from clients and some kind of friends or friends of friends. So, for example, when I think about that, that really resonates. I think of the traveling experiences that I've had solo, which haven't been that many, but it was like they worked really well where there were lots of people traveling solo. Because suddenly, or, doing that same thing. But mostly, like if I'd been working in those environments, it wouldn't have worked because the other people would have been moving on and I'd have been staying still or more still if I was working, because you have to be a bit more still if you're going to have a reliable Zoom call. So there's something about that. But I imagine there are some places these days where there are quite a lot of people essentially being digital nomads in a kind of center. And I imagine there are ways to find that online via Google. Is there anything else that, as a kind of way to create the conditions for a good experience like this that you can think of?
I think the other thing is, what I'd really recommend is exactly like you did, Robbie, where you can like try it in this country. So I think the thing is that if you can just experiment by, say, working in another city for a bit, if you have that opportunity, I think that's a really good tester. And also the whole point about this is about giving people options. So some people might do that and decide they don't want to be a digital nomad overseas, but they actually want to go and work in a different UK city or in a rural area for a change, and that would be good for them. So I think just try things, experiment, and just think about what your individual personality likes. What feels exciting and fresh and stimulating to your mind. I'd say that's it. Follow your own path as much as possible.
Yeah, lovely. From me, I think it's probably that first thing you said, really, which is remember it's not a holiday. So don't expect it to feel like a holiday. If you're going to be doing work there, it's going to be a new kind of thing. And personally, the thing that I've discovered I don't really like is it's a bit like what you said about going with somebody. It's like if everybody else is on holiday and I'm being a digital nomad, that is way less satisfying. Do you know what I mean? Like people do it all the time. It's like, well, I can't quite justify taking the time off, so I'll come with you and I'll do a bit of work. And I just personally hate that. I'm like, but I want to be downstairs where everyone's having fun instead of doing this. Even if the client is like a wonderful person who I love coaching, I still want to be downstairs chilling out, not doing the work. So that would be one of my rules. It is like who you're going with and what you're doing is really important. And it is nice if you've got two people who are going to do the same, even if you could do completely different kinds of work, you're going to go on a retreat like this together, sit by a rainy English sea or a beautiful Greek sea and do this kind of thing. I personally, I think I prefer that kind of angle as well. Yeah. Great stuff. Thanks so much, Alex.
Thanks, Robbie.
Hey everybody, Robbie here. And just a few quick things to share with you before you go on to the rest of your day. Thanks for getting to the end of the episode. I'm imagining that means you think the work we're doing is important and valuable. We think so too. And if you love this episode, I want to tell you about two things I think you'll love. The first is my free ebook, An Introduction to the Coaching Business Flywheel, which you can get at thecoachesjourney.com. It's my attempt to boil everything I've learned from my years supporting coaching and interviewing coaches about their businesses into one simple model containing the fundamentals of any sustainable coaching business. You can get it for free at thecoachesjourney.com. And the Coaches Journey Community. It's my flexible, affordable group coaching program for coaches. Alex was a member for a number of years. You get to pay between £20 or £100 a month and get access to a certain number of group coaching calls each year, plus some one-to-one time with me if you're a full member, and various other benefits too. And of course, you get the chance to be connected to other amazing coaches on their journeys. And you can join the community at thecoachesjourney.com/community. Thanks so much to everyone who's supported the Coach's Journey in so many ways over the years, but in particular, thanks to Alex O'Neill, Alex Whitten, Alan Bedding, David Norris, Jessica Jem, Lucy Brown, Michael Trugman, and Nicola Doyle for your ongoing support. Thank you too for listening, and we hope to have you back with us on the Coach's Journey podcast sometime soon.